pretend to be her mother for 8 days, begged the millionaire to the cook. The reason Emily Parker never imagined her quiet life as a cook at St. Joseph's Bakery in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of New York City could completely change in a matter of seconds. At 27, she had found her peace among the bread dough and the sweet aroma of cakes she prepared every day before dawn. It was on a rainy Wednesday afternoon that Ryan Thompson burst through the bakery door, carrying his 3-year-old daughter in his arms, with tears streaming down his face and a desperation that would break anyone's heart present. Little Lily, who used to visit the bakery every morning to get a sweet roll from the kind lady at the counter, was completely apathetic, her little blue eyes lost in emptiness and her blonde hair disheveled. "Please, I beg you," said Ryan, his voice choked, approaching the counter where Emily was preparing a batch of cream puffs. "I really need your help. It's about Lily." Emily immediately stopped what she was doing. She knew that adorable little girl well, who always stretched out her tiny hands to her, asking for affection along with the sweet bread. Over the past 6 months, since Ryan had moved to the neighborhood after losing his wife in an accident, the morning routine of father and daughter at the bakery had become part of her day. "What happened to her?" asked Emily, coming around the counter and approaching. She looked so sad. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to control the tears that insisted on welling up. "My mother-in-law, Mrs. Margaret, arrived yesterday from Washington, D.C. She wants to take Lily to live with her in Europe. She says I'm not emotionally capable of raising my daughter alone." His voice broke on the last word. Emily felt a tightness in her chest, seeing the suffering etched on the face of that man, who had always seemed like a dedicated and caring father to her. "Since Lily's mother passed away, Mrs. Margaret has never supported me," continued Ryan. "She always thought I wasn't good enough for her daughter, and now she wants to prove that I'm not good enough for my own daughter either." At that moment, Lily lifted her little eyes, and upon seeing Emily, stretched her small arms toward her, murmuring softly a word that made the cook's heart race. "Mommy." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan looked at Emily with a mixture of surprise and hope, while she felt her legs go weak. She's been saying that for 3 days, explained Ryan, his voice still trembling. "Ever since Mrs. Margaret announced she's taking her away, Lily has stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped playing. She only shows any reaction when I talk about our visit to the bakery, or when I show her a photo of you that she has kept." Emily was speechless. She picked up Lily in her arms, feeling how the little girl snuggled against her chest in a way that deeply moved her. "The custody hearing is scheduled for 8 days from now," said Ryan, running his hand through his hair in despair. "If I can prove that Lily has a maternal figure present, that there's emotional stability in our home, maybe the judge won't grant custody to my mother-in-law." Emily looked at him without understanding where he was going with this. "I know it's an absurd request, but could you pretend to be like a mother to her? Just for these 8 days? I know I have no right to ask this, but I'm desperate. I can't lose my daughter." Ryan's words echoed in the bakery like a distant echo. Emily looked at Lily, who was now absent-mindedly playing with the aqua-green apron she was wearing, and felt as if fate was playing a cruel trick on her life. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. At 7 years old, Emily had lost her own mother in a household accident and had been raised by her maternal grandmother, Mrs. Rose, a strict woman who had never shown much affection. The sensation of having a child nestled in her arms, calling her mommy, awakened feelings she had buried long ago. I don't know if I can do this," she murmured, still gently rocking Lily. "It's very complicated, Mr. Ryan." "Please don't call me sir," he said, moving closer. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I see how Lily responds to you. In 6 months of coming here, you're the only person besides me who can get a smile out of her." Mrs. Carmen, the bakery owner who had watched the entire scene in silence, approached the group. "Emily dear, if you want to help, you can take some time off. We have a substitute worker here," said the 60-year-old woman with a warm smile. "Sometimes life puts us in situations we don't expect, but that might be exactly what we need." Emily looked again at Lily, who had now fallen asleep in her arms, breathing peacefully for the first time in days, according to Ryan. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but there was something about the whole situation that struck a very deep chord in her heart. "If I accept," she said finally, "it would have to be with some conditions." Ryan immediately nodded, willing to accept any terms. "First condition, no unnecessary lies. If someone asks details about our relationship, I won't make up elaborate stories. Second condition, total respect. This isn't a performance to humiliate or use me. Third condition, Lily can't find out it's pretend. If we're going to do this, we'll protect her from any emotional confusion." "I accept everything," Ryan said without hesitation. "And I'll pay for your time. It's not fair that you do this for free." "I don't want money," Emily replied firmly. "If I'm going to do this, it's for Lily. Not for you, not for money." The coldness in her voice made Ryan realize he was dealing with a woman of very solid principles. He nodded respectfully. "So, do you accept?" Emily looked once more at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms, and then at Ryan, whose eyes still held tears of desperation and a fragile hope. "I accept. But let's make one thing very clear. After these 8 days, I go back to my normal life. I don't want to create false expectations in anyone." "Understood," Ryan said, and for the first time since he had entered the bakery, he gave a genuine smile. "Thank you so much. You can't imagine what this means to me." Mrs. Carmen, who continued watching the scene, shook her head in approval. "Everything will work out, my dear. Sometimes the heart knows things the head hasn't yet understood." That night, Emily packed her bags with a mixture of nervousness and apprehension. She didn't know exactly what she was getting into, but there was something about how Lily had calmed down in her arms that reassured her. It was as if the little girl recognized in her something she didn't even know she possessed. Ryan's house was in a gated community in Scarsdale, an imposing mansion that intimidated Emily at first. She had grown up in a small apartment in Queens with her grandmother, and all that display of wealth made her uncomfortable. "The maid prepared the guest room for you," Ryan said, carrying her bag. "It's next to Lily's room, to make it easier if she needs anything during the night." Inside the house, Emily met Florence, the 55-year-old housekeeper who had worked for the family for over a decade. The woman greeted her politely, but Emily sensed a coldness in her gaze that put her on alert. "Florence has taken care of Lily since she was born," explained Ryan. "She knows all the household routines." "I'm sure Mr. Ryan made the right decision," said Florence, though her tone made it clear she didn't approve of the situation. "I hope the young lady knows how to handle small children." Emily felt the provocation but maintained her composure. "I'm sure we'll get along very well," she replied with a diplomatic smile. That first night, Lily woke up crying around 2 in the morning. Emily, who had been sleeping lightly in the unfamiliar surroundings, rushed to the girl's room before Ryan even arrived. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, scooping Lily into her arms. "I dreamed about the mean grandma," the girl whimpered, clutching Emily's pajamas. "She wanted to take me away from Mommy." Emily's heart tightened. Even in her dreams, the child was tormented by the threat of separation. "Mommy's here," she said, surprising herself with how naturally the words came out. "I won't let anyone take you away from me." Lily immediately calmed down, nestling once more against Emily's chest. Within minutes, she was asleep again, breathing peacefully and steadily. Ryan appeared in the doorway just then, watching the scene with an expression of astonishment and gratitude. "She hasn't slept through the night in a week," he murmured. "Ever since Mrs. Margaret arrived, the nightmares have been constant." "Children sense much more than we realize," said Emily, still gently rocking Lily. "She's scared, but she can't properly express what she's feeling." "Do you have experience with children?" Emily hesitated for a moment. She didn't want to lie, but she wasn't ready to share the most painful details of her own history either. "Let's just say I've been in situations where I had to care for a frightened child," she replied, avoiding going into detail. The next morning, Lily woke up more cheerful than she had been in days. She asked to help Emily choose her clothes and insisted on brushing her hair with a small toy brush. "Mommy has the prettiest hair in the world," the girl said, running the brush through Emily's brown strands. "Thank you, Princess," replied Emily, feeling a warmth in her chest each time she heard that word come from Lily's mouth. During breakfast prepared by Florence, the housekeeper made a point of commenting on every detail of the household routine, as if testing Emily's knowledge. "Lily always has fresh orange juice for breakfast," she said, pouring a glass for the girl. "Never artificial." "Good to know," Emily replied calmly. "Fresh orange juice is much more nutritious indeed." "And she doesn't eat scrambled eggs, only hard-boiled. The bread has to be whole wheat, never white. The milk needs to be warm, not hot." Emily nodded at each piece of information, but noticed Lily listening to the conversation with a confused expression. "Mommy, I don't like hard-boiled eggs," the girl said quietly. "I like scrambled." Florence quickly interrupted. "No, dear, you've always eaten hard-boiled eggs." "But I don't like them," insisted Lily, looking at Emily. "Can I have scrambled today?" Emily glanced at Ryan, who nodded discreetly. "Of course you can, sweetheart. Florence, could you please prepare scrambled eggs for Lily?" The housekeeper's expression tightened further, but she complied without comment. Emily began to understand she was dealing with someone who didn't approve of changes to the established routine, especially from a stranger. After breakfast, Ryan had to leave for an important meeting at his construction company, leaving Emily alone with Lily for the first time. "What would you like to do today?" asked Emily Parker, bending down to the little girl's level. "I want to draw a picture for Daddy," replied Lily, running to get her crayons. They sat in the living room, a spacious area with large windows overlooking the house's garden. Lily drew with concentration, creating colorful figures depicting her, Ryan, and Emily Parker holding hands. "Look, Mommy, we're a happy family," she said, proudly showing the drawing. Emily Parker felt a lump in her throat. The child's innocence made everything emotionally more complicated than she had anticipated. "It's beautiful, Princess. Your dad will be very happy." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Florence answered it and returned with an expression even more closed off than usual. "It's Mrs. Margaret," she announced. "She said she wants to meet Mr. Ryan's new companion." Emily Parker felt her blood run cold. She hadn't expected Lily's grandmother to show up so soon, and she certainly wasn't prepared for a confrontation on the second day. "Where is my granddaughter?" echoed a firm, authoritative voice down the hallway. Mrs. Margaret entered the room like a hurricane. She was a woman of about 70, elegantly dressed, with graying hair pulled back in a perfect bun, and blue eyes that seemed to X-ray anyone's soul. Despite her age, she emanated an energy and determination that were intimidating. Lily, who was sitting next to Emily Parker, immediately shrank back and hid behind her. "So you're the one who's confusing my granddaughter's head," said Mrs. Margaret, stopping in front of Emily Parker with her arms crossed. Emily Parker stood up, keeping Lily protected behind her. "My name is Emily Parker. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Margaret." "Don't come at me with formalities, young lady. I know very well what's going on here." Ryan thought he could fool me with this ridiculous charade. "Grandma, please," murmured Lily, coming out from behind Emily Parker and positioning herself in front of her, as if wanting to protect her. "Mommy is good." "Mommy?" Mrs. Margaret raised an eyebrow, looking from Lily to Emily Parker with disdain. "What kind of nonsense is this?" "Lily, how about you go play in your room while Grandma and I talk?" suggested Emily Parker, trying to remove the child from a situation that was getting tense. "I don't want to leave you alone with the mean Grandma," said Lily, clutching Emily Parker's skirt. The girl's comment made Mrs. Margaret's expression harden even more. "Mean Grandma? What have you been putting in this child's head?" "I haven't put anything in her head," replied Emily Parker, keeping her voice calm but firm. "Lily is just expressing what she feels. A 3-year-old doesn't know what she feels. She's influenced by the adults around her." Emily Parker took a deep breath, remembering her own conditions for agreeing to help Ryan. "Mrs. Margaret, I understand your concern for Lily, but I'd like to ask that we maintain a respectful tone in front of her. Children absorb much more than we imagine. I won't take parenting advice from a stranger who appeared out of nowhere in my granddaughter's life." Lily began to cry softly, clearly disturbed by the tension in the room. "Grandma, why are you mad at Mommy?" Mrs. Margaret looked at her granddaughter, and her expression softened slightly, but quickly hardened again when she looked at Emily Parker. "Honey," This young lady is not your mother. Your mother was my daughter, Samantha, who unfortunately is no longer with us." "I know," said Lily, wiping away her tears, "but Mommy Emily takes care of me now." The way the girl had made the distinction between Mommy Samantha and Mommy Emily deeply touched Emily Parker's heart, but it also made her realize how emotionally complicated the situation was becoming. "Lily, how about you show Grandma your toys?" suggested Emily Parker. "I'm sure she would like to see how you've been growing." The little girl hesitated but ended up agreeing, taking her grandmother's hand and leading her to see her toys. This gave Emily a few minutes to compose herself and think about what she would say when they returned. When they came back to the living room, Mrs. Margaret seemed slightly less hostile but still maintained a defensive posture. "We need to talk alone," she said to Emily. "Lily, can you go play in the garden?" "It's a beautiful day," Emily suggested. After the girl left, Mrs. Margaret sat in the main armchair of the room, in a position that made it clear who was in charge there. "I'll be direct with you, young lady. I don't know what kind of agreement you made with my son-in-law, but I won't allow my granddaughter to be used as a pawn in a game." "I'm not using Lily as a pawn in any game," replied Emily, sitting on the sofa facing the lady. "I'm here because she needed emotional stability." "Stability?" Mrs. Margaret let out a bitter laugh. "You think showing up out of nowhere in her life and pretending to be a mother is stability? I didn't appear out of nowhere. I've known Lily for 6 months. Every day she and Ryan come to the bakery where I work." "Oh, so you're the bakery girl." Mrs. Margaret's tone became even more scornful. "Now it all makes sense." Emily felt her blood boil with the implied prejudice in the comment, but she kept her composure. "Yes, I'm a cook. I work honestly and with great pride. I have nothing against honest work, but let's agree that you're not equipped to raise a child from Lily's social position." "Social position?" Emily stood up, no longer able to contain her indignation. "Lily is a 3-year-old child who needs affection, attention, and love. That has nothing to do with social position." "Yes, it does. Lily will inherit a considerable estate. She needs to be educated to have responsibilities, worldly knowledge, culture. She can't be raised like an ordinary child. Every child should be raised with love, regardless of whether they have an inheritance or not." Mrs. Margaret also stood up, looking Emily in the eyes. "I'll make you an offer. $50,000 for you to leave Lily's life today and never come back." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Emily looked at the lady with a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Do you really think I'm here for money? Everyone has a price, young lady. What's yours?" "My price is seeing Lily happy and secure, and clearly that doesn't include being taken away from the people who love her." At that moment, Ryan arrived home and found the two women staring at each other in the living room. "Mother?" he said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming today." "I came to get to know my granddaughter's situation better," replied Mrs. Margaret, without taking her eyes off Emily. "And I've already seen everything I needed to see." "And what did you think?" asked Ryan, positioning himself beside Emily in a clear show of support. "I think you're being very irresponsible, Ryan. This young lady has no qualifications to be a mother figure for Lily." "Qualifications?" Ryan raised his voice. "The only qualification that matters is the love she shows for Lily, something that unfortunately has been lacking in this family for a long time." Mrs. Margaret paled at her son-in-law's comment. "How dare you tell me that love is lacking in this family? Where were you when Lily was born? When Samantha was pregnant and feeling sick? When Lily took her first steps? Spoke her first words? You only showed up here when you decided you wanted to take my daughter away." Ryan's words echoed through the room like gunshots. Emily realized there was much more family history behind that situation than she had imagined. "I was giving you space to build your own family," replied Mrs. Margaret, but her voice had lost some of its previous firmness. "Space? Or were you showing that you never approved of my marriage to your daughter?" Lily appeared at the living room door at that moment, her eyes frightened by the argument. "Why is everyone shouting?" she asked, running to Emily. "Sorry, Princess," said Emily, picking her up. "Sometimes adults talk a little loud when they're worried." "Are you leaving because of Grandma?" asked Lily, with tears in her eyes. "I'm not leaving," replied Emily, looking directly at Mrs. Margaret. Mommy is staying here with you. Emily's statement sounded like a declaration of war to Mrs. Margaret, but also like a sacred promise to Lily. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, after Mrs. Margaret left, promising to return the next day with reinforcements, Ryan and Emily had their first honest conversation about the situation. "I'm sorry you have to go through this," he said while they had tea in the kitchen after Lily fell asleep. "I didn't think she'd come so soon." "It's okay, but I need to better understand what I'm facing here," replied Emily. "I realize there's a lot more family history involved." Ryan sighed deeply before starting to speak. "Mrs. Margaret never accepted me as a son-in-law. She thought Samantha deserved someone from a traditional family with a complete college education. I started working at 16 in construction, built my company from scratch, and that bothered her a lot. When Samantha got pregnant, Mrs. Margaret suggested we wait to get married, claiming I wasn't mature enough to be a father. Samantha had a big fight with her over that." Emily listened attentively, beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. "When Lily was born, Mrs. Margaret wanted to hire a professional nanny, choose a private pediatrician, even decide which school she should attend in the future. Samantha got tired of the interference and asked her mother to take a break. And did she respect that? For a while, yes, but after the accident..." Ryan stopped speaking, swallowing hard. "You don't have to continue if it's difficult," said Emily softly. "No, you need to know." Samantha was coming back from a friend's house on a rainy night. The car skidded on the road and he closed his eyes, still suffering from the memory. "Mrs. Margaret got to the hospital before me and said that if I had been a more present husband, Samantha wouldn't have been going out alone on a night like that." Emily felt a tightness in her chest, imagining the pain Ryan had felt, losing his wife and still being blamed by his mother-in-law. For the last 2 years, she barely visited Lily. She sent expensive gifts, called sporadically, but kept her distance. Until 2 weeks ago, when she showed up here saying she had rethought everything and that Lily needed a more refined education. And does she have the legal right to seek custody? Unfortunately, yes. As a paternal grandmother, and considering that Samantha was an only child, she can claim she has better financial and emotional conditions to raise Lily. Emily was silent for a few moments, processing all the information. "Ryan, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." "Go ahead. Do you really believe this act is going to solve anything? Or are you just delaying a bigger problem?" Ryan looked at her with sincerity. "Honestly, I don't know. I just know I can't lose my daughter. Lily is all I have left of Samantha, everything that keeps me going every day. And if in the end the judge grants custody to your mother-in-law anyway, then at least I'll know I did everything in my power." Emily Parker nodded, understanding his desperation, but also wondering if she was truly prepared for what might lie ahead. The next day, Lily woke up with a fever. Not very high, but enough to make her sluggish and without appetite. Emily spent the day taking care of her, applying cold compresses, offering fluids, and telling stories. "Mommy, my tummy hurts," Lily whimpered in the afternoon. "It must be because of the fever, sweetie. How about we have some chamomile tea?" Emily prepared the tea with honey and sat on the bed with Lily in her lap, giving the little girl small sips. "Mommy, will you stay with me forever?" asked Lily, nestling into Emily's chest. The innocent question hit Emily like a punch in the stomach. How could she explain to a 3-year-old that this was temporary? "Mommy will be here as long as you need me," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "And I'll always need you," said Lily, closing her little eyes, satisfied with the answer. Florence, who was watching the scene from the door, approached with a thermometer. "I'll take her temperature again," said the housekeeper. "Thank you, Florence," replied Emily, noticing that the woman was less hostile than the day before. After checking that the fever had gone down, Florence hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You have a way with sick children," she commented, her tone slightly softer. "Children need patience and affection when they're not well," replied Emily. "Her mother, Mrs. Samantha, had that gift too. Whenever Lily got a little sick, she knew exactly what to do. It was the first time Florence had spoken about Samantha, and Emily noticed a subtle change in the housekeeper's attitude. "Did you work here when Mrs. Samantha was alive?" "I worked here throughout their marriage. Mrs. Samantha was a very special person, caring, attentive, always concerned with everyone's well-being. It must have been hard for you too when she passed." Florence nodded, her eyes watery. Lily was her darling. Mrs. Samantha would spend hours playing with the girl, singing, telling stories. After she was gone, Lily felt very lost. And Mr. Ryan? Mr. Ryan was devastated. For months he could barely look at Lily without breaking down in tears. It was a very difficult time for all of us. Emily began to understand the household dynamics better and how much Samantha's loss had affected the entire family. "Florence, can I ask you something?" "Yes, you may. Do you really believe Lily would be better off with her grandmother in Europe?" Florence looked at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in Emily's lap, and sighed deeply. "Mrs. Margaret can offer many things that Lily might not have here. Refined education, travel, culture." She paused. "But Lily needs love and emotional stability above all. And do you think she would have that there?" "Honestly, I don't know. Mrs. Margaret is a very rigid woman. She raised Mrs. Samantha in a very controlling way, always deciding everything for her." "And was Samantha happy with that?" "At first she obeyed everything her mother said, but when she met Mr. Ryan, she discovered she could make her own choices. It was the first time I saw her truly happy and fulfilled." The conversation was interrupted by Ryan's arrival, who was eager to know how Lily was doing. "How is she?" he asked, approaching the bed. "The fever has gone down, and she slept all afternoon," replied Emily. "I think she'll be better by tomorrow." Ryan sat on the edge of the bed watching his daughter sleep. "She's been much calmer since you arrived," he remarked. "In the last few months, even a slight fever turned into a battle." "Children sense our anxiety," said Emily. "The calmer we are, the more they calm down." "You speak as if you have previous experience." Emily felt her chest tighten. She wasn't prepared to share her personal story, but she didn't want to lie either. "I do. A few years ago, Ryan realized it was a delicate subject and didn't press further. Florence, who was still in the room, observed Emily's care with Lily and the naturalness with which she handled the situation. "Mr. Ryan, excuse me, but I'd like to say something," said the housekeeper. "Of course, Florence. Mrs. Margaret approached me this morning before the young lady arrived. She wants me to report everything I observe about Miss Emily's behavior." The atmosphere in the room immediately became tense. Ryan looked at Florence with disappointment. "And are you going to do that?" "No, sir. I'll tell her exactly what I'm seeing. A dedicated young lady taking loving care of Lily. If that's not what she wants to hear, that's her problem." Emily looked at Florence with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, Florence." "Don't thank me yet, miss. Mrs. Margaret is very persistent. She won't give up easily." As if summoned by the housekeeper's words, the doorbell rang at that moment. It was Mrs. Margaret, accompanied by an elegant man about 45 years old. "This is Dr. Richard Anderson, a family law specialist," she introduced as soon as they entered the room. "I've come to get more precise information about Lily's situation." Ryan went downstairs to receive them, leaving Emily in the room with Lily, who was still sleeping. "Where is my granddaughter?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "She's sleeping. She had a fever during the day," explained Ryan. "A fever?" Mrs. Margaret immediately became agitated. "What kind of fever? Did you call a doctor?" "It was just a mild fever, Mother. Emily took very good care of her." "Emily? The girl from the bakery?" The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Does she have training in nursing or education?" "You don't need specific training to lovingly care for a child," replied Ryan, beginning to get irritated. "Mr. Ryan, I understand your position, but I need to inform you that Mrs. Margaret has solid arguments to seek custody of Lily," said Dr. Richard. "Financial stability, a home in Europe, access to top-quality education, and I don't have financial stability?" Ryan became upset. "I built a successful company. I have enough assets to give Lily everything she needs." "It's not just a financial matter," intervened Mrs. Margaret. "It's a question of family structure. Lily needs a consistent maternal figure." And that's exactly what she has with Emily. A consistent maternal figure who isn't an employee hired to pretend to be a mother, retorted the lawyer. Ryan turned pale. It was obvious that Mrs. Margaret had discovered or suspected the true nature of his agreement with Emily. At that moment, Lily woke up and began to cry, calling for Emily. The girl's screams echoed through the house, making everyone in the room look up. "I'll see what happened," said Ryan, running up the stairs. Mrs. Margaret and the lawyer followed him, arriving at the room just as Emily managed to calm Lily down. "What happened, Princess?" asked Emily, with Lily in her arms. "I dreamed that Grandma had taken you away too," whimpered the girl. "Too?" asked Dr. Richard, intrigued. Lily looked at him with eyes still full of tears. "Grandma took my first mommy away. Now she wants to take mommy Emily." The silence that followed was charged with emotions. Mrs. Margaret looked at her granddaughter with an expression of pain she couldn't disguise. "Lily, Grandma didn't take your first mommy away," she said, approaching the bed. "Yes, you did. Daddy was crying when you said that Mommy had gone to live in heaven because of you." The innocent words of the child struck Mrs. Margaret like a stab wound. It was obvious that Lily had heard and interpreted an argument among the adults in her own way. "Sweetie, it wasn't like that," began Mrs. Margaret, but Lily clung tighter to Emily Parker. "I don't want you to take Mommy Emily away too. She's good to me." Dr. Richard observed the scene with professional attention, making mental notes about the family dynamics he was witnessing. "Lily, how about we show Grandma the drawing you made today?" suggested Emily, trying to ease the tension. The girl nodded positively and brought over the colorful drawing she had made that morning. It was a simple but touching representation, 3 figures holding hands under a large yellow sun. "This is our family," explained Lily to her grandmother. "Daddy, me, and Mommy Emily." Mrs. Margaret looked at the drawing and then at Emily with an unreadable expression. "It's a very beautiful drawing, sweetie," she said, but her voice was softer and less firm than usual. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out." Now continuing. "Dr. Richard, I need to speak with Miss Emily in private," said Mrs. Margaret, after a few minutes of observing the interaction between Emily and Lily. "I don't think that's a good idea," intervened Ryan, "after what happened yesterday." "It's okay," said Emily, handing Lily over to Ryan. "Let's talk in the living room." Minutes later, Emily and Mrs. Margaret were alone in the living room, while Dr. Richard waited outside and Ryan stayed in the room with Lily. "I'll be direct with you, young lady," began Mrs. Margaret. "I know you're not really Ryan's girlfriend." Emily kept a neutral expression, neither confirming nor denying. "Whatever kind of arrangement you two have made, I can offer much more. 100,000 rees for you to disappear from Lily's life today. I already told you yesterday that I'm not here for money. 200,000. Mrs. Margaret, you can offer as much money as you want. My answer will always be the same." The lady fell silent for a few moments, analyzing Emily with scrutinizing eyes. "Then tell me, what do you gain from taking care of a child who isn't your own?" The question caught Emily off guard. It was exactly the same question she had been asking herself since she agreed to help Ryan. "I gain the certainty that Lily is being loved and cared for properly." "Love?" Mrs. Margaret let out a humorless laugh. "You've barely known this child for a week. I've known Lily for 6 months. And sometimes it's not the time that matters, but the intensity of the connection." "Connection?" Mrs. Margaret stood up and began pacing the room. "Let me tell you something about connections, young lady. I carried Samantha in my womb for 9 months, breastfed her, raised her, educated her, gave her everything a mother could give, and she abandoned me for a man she barely knew." Emily realized she was finally seeing the real wound behind Mrs. Margaret's aggressive attitude. "You felt abandoned by your daughter. Samantha chose Ryan over me. She chose a simple life over the opportunities I could provide, and look how it turned out. She's no longer here." "But that wasn't Ryan's fault." "Wasn't it?" Mrs. Margaret turned to face Emily. "If she had listened to me, she would have married someone from our social class, someone who could have protected her properly." "Do you really believe that social class can protect someone from accidents?" Mrs. Margaret fell silent, clearly shaken by the question. "Lily is all I have left of my daughter," she said, her voice softer. "I can't allow her to be raised in the same irresponsible way." "Mrs. Margaret, may I ask a personal question?" The woman hesitated but nodded positively. "Were you happy when Samantha was a child?" "Of course I was happy. Samantha was my life." "And was Samantha happy?" The question hung in the air for long seconds. Mrs. Margaret looked out the window, lost in memories. "Samantha was an obedient child. She did everything I told her, studied what I chose, associated with people I approved of." "But was she happy?" "She never complained about anything." "That's not the same as being happy." Mrs. Margaret turned back to Emily Parker, this time with a less hostile and more vulnerable expression. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that perhaps Samantha chose Ryan not to abandon you, but to finally choose her own happiness." Emily Parker's words echoed through the room. Mrs. Margaret sat down heavily in the armchair, as if the weight of the revelations had left her tired. "You don't understand," she murmured. "I lost my daughter. I can't lose my granddaughter too." "But you're not losing Lily. You're trying to control her the same way you tried to control Samantha." "I just want to protect her. And Ryan wants to protect her too, and Lily wants to be loved and feel safe. Maybe you all want the same thing, but you're going about it in different ways." Mrs. Margaret looked at Emily Parker with a new expression, as if seeing her for the first time. "Why would a stranger care so much about our family?" Emily Parker took a deep breath. The time had come to be more honest about her own motivations. "Because I was also a frightened child who needed emotional stability." "What happened to you?" "I lost my mother when I was 7. I was raised by my grandmother, who did the best she could but could never show much affection. I grew up always feeling like something was missing." Mrs. Margaret fell silent, processing the information. "When I see Lily, I see a little of myself at that age. A child who needs to feel loved and safe above all else. And do you think Ryan can give that to her?" "I think Ryan, Lily, and you can give that to each other, if you can stop fighting and start talking." At that moment, Dr. Richard entered the room. "Mrs. Margaret, we need to talk about the next legal steps," he said. "Doctor, can you wait a few more minutes?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "I'm having an important conversation here." The lawyer seemed surprised by the request, but nodded and left again. "Emily Parker, may I call you that?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "Of course." "Suppose I consider the possibility of not proceeding with the custody request. Would you consider that?" "I'm asking hypothetically. In that case, how do you see Lily's future?" Emily Parker thought carefully before answering. "I see Lily growing up with the constant presence of her father, who loves her unconditionally. I see her having access to quality education, but also playing in the dirt, getting messy, being a child. I see her visiting her grandmother regularly, learning about her family history and being proud of her roots." "And you? Where do you fit into this whole story?" It was the question Emily Parker most feared answering, because she didn't even know the answer herself. I would return to my normal life. Our agreement was for only 8 days. "But what if Lily doesn't want you to leave?" "Then we'll have to talk to her and explain the situation with care and patience." Mrs. Margaret stood up and walked to the window, watching the garden where Lily was playing with Ryan. "Samantha used to play in this garden when she was little," she said with a nostalgic voice. "I would watch from the window, always worried if she would get hurt, if she would get her clothes dirty, if she was spending too much time playing instead of studying." "And now, looking back, do you regret anything?" "I regret not having played with her, of having worried so much about protecting her that I forgot to enjoy the simple moments." Emily approached the window too, watching the scene outside. "There's still time to enjoy these moments with Lily." "Do you really believe that?" "I do. Lily is only 3 years old. She has a whole life ahead to build happy memories with everyone who loves her." Mrs. Margaret remained silent for long minutes, clearly reflecting on everything that had been said. "Emily, I need to make you a different proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "What if, instead of you disappearing, we all tried to find a way to live together in harmony? For Lily's sake." Emily looked at her surprised. It was the last thing she expected to hear. "How would that work?" "I don't know yet. But maybe it's time for me to stop trying to control everything and start building bridges instead of walls. Are you serious? I am, but with one condition. What? I want you to be completely honest with me about your feelings for Ryan and Lily. Emily felt her heart race. It was exactly the question she had been avoiding asking herself. My feelings? Yes, because I see how you look at them, how you care for Lily, how you defend this family. This goes far beyond a favor or temporary arrangement. Emily took a deep breath, knowing the time had come to be completely honest, first with herself. You're right. It's no longer just a temporary arrangement. Lily awakened a maternal love in me that I didn't know existed. And Ryan showed me what a real family is like. And does that scare you? Very much, because I know I'm not part of this real family. I'm just someone who showed up to help in a complicated situation. And if you could be part of this real family, what would you say? Emily looked at Mrs. Margaret with teary eyes. I'd say it would be the greatest gift life could give me. But I also know I can't base my life on fantasies. Who said it would be fantasy? Before Emily could answer, Lily came running into the room, followed by Ryan. Mommy, Grandma! The girl shouted excitedly. Daddy said we can have a picnic in the garden. What a wonderful idea, said Mrs. Margaret, bending down to her granddaughter's level. Can Grandma join too? Lily looked at her with surprise. You want to play with us? Yes, I do, sweetie, if you'll let me. Of course we will. Lily clapped her hands excitedly. It'll be the whole family together. Ryan looked at Emily and then at his mother-in-law, clearly confused by Mrs. Margaret's change in attitude. Mother, are you sure? I am, Ryan. I think it's time for me to learn to be a better grandmother. During the picnic in the garden, something magical happened. Lily managed to draw genuine smiles from Mrs. Margaret, who let herself be carried away by her granddaughter's spontaneity. Ryan relaxed for the first time in weeks, seeing that there might be a possibility of family peace. And Emily watched everything with a mix of joy and melancholy, knowing that this harmony was exactly what Lily needed, but wondering what her place would be in this new arrangement. Mommy, are you sad? Asked Lily, sitting on Emily's lap. I'm not sad, Princess. I'm happy watching you have fun with Grandma and Daddy. But your eyes are shining like when we want to cry. The child's perception surprised all the adults. Lily was still very young, but already showed impressive emotional sensitivity. Sometimes we get emotional when we see beautiful things, explained Emily, like seeing you happy playing with your family. You're my family too, said Lily, hugging her. Yes, sweetie, I'm your family too. Mrs. Margaret observed the scene carefully, noticing the natural way Lily interacted with Emily and the genuine care the young woman showed for the girl. When Dr. Richard left that night, he took with him an unexpected instruction from Mrs. Margaret to temporarily suspend the legal actions while the family tried to resolve matters amicably. I don't understand, Mrs. Margaret, said the lawyer. We had a solid case. Doctor, sometimes legal justice isn't the same as human justice. I need some time to think more about what's truly best for my granddaughter. After everyone had retired, Ryan sought out Emily in the kitchen, where she was preparing tea before bed. What happened with my mother-in-law today, he asked. I've never seen her like that. I think she finally understood that you both want the same thing, Lily's well-being. And what did you say to make her change her mind so drastically? Emily stirred her tea thoughtfully before answering. I told her some truths she needed to hear, and she told me some truths I needed to hear too. Like what? Like the fact that maybe I'm more emotionally involved in this situation than I should be. Ryan approached her, stopping by the kitchen counter. And is that a problem? It's complicated, Ryan. Our agreement was temporary, only 8 days. What if I don't want it to be temporary anymore? The question hung in the air between them, filled with possibilities and fears. Emily looked at Ryan, seeing sincerity in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying these 3 days with you here have completely changed the atmosphere of our home. Lily is happier than I've seen her since Samantha left. And he hesitated. I feel less lost. Ryan, you need to be careful not to confuse gratitude with other feelings. It's not gratitude, Emily. It's much more than that. She turned to face him fully. And I need to be careful not to confuse the love I feel for Lily with other feelings. What if it's not confusion? What if it's all real? Before Emily could answer, Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway with her teddy bear under her arm and sleepy eyes. "I can't sleep," she said, approaching the two. "How about a glass of warm milk?" suggested Emily, picking her up. "Only if Daddy and Mommy have some with me." Ryan and Emily exchanged a knowing look. Lily's innocence was unknowingly forcing them to confront their own feelings. "Of course, Princess," said Ryan. "Let's all have warm milk together." As they prepared the milk and sat at the kitchen table, the three looked like a real family. Lily chatted about plans for the next day. Ryan made jokes that made her laugh, and Emily watched everything with a smile on her face and an ache in her heart, knowing that this happiness might be temporary. "Mummy, tomorrow can you teach me how to make bread?" asked Lily. "Yes, sweetheart. But remember, Mommy works at a bakery. Maybe it's better to teach you at home." "Or we can visit the bakery," Lily suggested excitedly. "I want to see where Mommy works." Ryan looked at Emily with a questioning expression. "I think Mrs. Carmen would like to meet you," Emily told Lily. "Who's Mrs. Carmen?" "She's my boss, a very nice lady who makes the best cream puffs in New York City." "Cream puffs? We can eat real dreams." Ryan laughed at his daughter's excitement. "We can go tomorrow morning if you want," he said. "Yes, I want to see Mommy's house." The naturalness with which Lily referred to the bakery as Mommy's house touched Emily deeply. It was as if the girl instinctively understood that people can have more than one special place in their lives. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Emily Parker stayed awake for hours, thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. She was falling in love with that adorable little girl, and also developing feelings for Ryan Thompson that she hadn't planned to have. But she also knew that the whole situation had started as a performance to deceive a judge, and that deeply bothered her. How could you build something real on a foundation of lies? In the next room, Ryan was also awake, reflecting on how his life had completely changed in just 3 days. Emily's presence had brought a lightness and naturalness to his home that he hadn't felt in a long time, but he also questioned whether he was being fair to her, involving her in his family problems, and then developing feelings that weren't part of the original agreement. And in the guest room across the house, Mrs. Margaret looked out the window at the garden where she had played with Lily for the first time in years, questioning all the choices she had made as a mother and grandmother. The morning of the 4th day brought unexpected surprises. During breakfast, the doorbell rang, and Florence announced the arrival of an elegant woman of about 40, who introduced herself as Dr. Jennifer Miller, a child psychologist. "I was hired by Dr. Richard to conduct a psychological evaluation of Lily," she explained. "It's a standard procedure in custody dispute cases." Mrs. Margaret seemed embarrassed. "Doctor, yesterday I spoke with Dr. Richard and asked to suspend the legal actions temporarily." "I understand, but the evaluation was already scheduled. It would be interesting to keep it, even to have a professional opinion on the child's emotional well-being." Ryan looked at Emily with concern. A psychological evaluation could expose the entire performance. "It's not a problem," said Emily, surprising everyone. "If it's for Lily's benefit, I accept any evaluation." Dr. Jennifer spent the morning observing family interactions and asking careful questions to Lily, who answered with the typical naturalness of a 3-year-old. "Lily, tell me about your family," asked the psychologist. "I have Daddy, who is the best daddy in the world. I have Mommy Emily, who makes delicious bread and tells me stories. And I have Grandma, who now plays with me in the garden." "And your first mommy?" "Mommy? Samantha went to live in heaven, but she loves me from there. Daddy said she's always taking care of me, even when I can't see her." "And how do you feel living here?" "I feel happy, especially after Mommy Emily came to live with us." "And if Mommy Emily had to travel?" Lily immediately became serious. "She can't travel. I need her here with me." Dr. Jennifer observed the girl's reaction and took some notes. "Lily, can you show me your toys?" While the psychologist talked with Lily in her room, the adults waited in the living room, all tense about what might be discovered. "Dr. Jennifer seems very competent," commented Mrs. Margaret. I hope she sees how well-adjusted Lily is, said Ryan. And what if she notices our situation isn't conventional? Emily asked quietly. Then we'll deal with the consequences, Ryan replied. But I won't regret trying to keep my daughter with me. After 2 hours of evaluation, Dr. Jennifer met with everyone in the living room to share her preliminary observations. It's evident that Lily is an emotionally healthy child, despite having experienced significant losses, she began. She demonstrates strong emotional bonds with the key figures present in her life. And what is your professional recommendation? Asked Mrs. Margaret. My recommendation is that any drastic changes to Lily's family environment be avoided. She clearly feels safe and loved in the current configuration. Ryan breathed a sigh of relief, but Dr. Jennifer continued. However, I observed that there are some aspects of the family dynamics that deserve attention. Everyone tensed up again. Lily shows a very strong emotional dependence on you, Emily, which is natural considering she apparently filled an important maternal void. But this dependence could become problematic if the bond is abruptly interrupted. Emily felt her stomach churn. What do you suggest, Doctor? She asked. I suggest that regardless of future family arrangements, the transition be made gradually and carefully, always prioritizing Lily's emotional well-being. And what about the custody issue? Asked Mrs. Margaret. Professionally, I see no justification for a change of custody based on the child's welfare. Lily is clearly well adjusted to her current environment. Mrs. Margaret nodded slowly, as if making a final decision. Doctor, thank you very much for the evaluation. It was very enlightening. After the psychologist left, the atmosphere in the house changed again. It was as if everyone knew an important decision was being made, but no one knew exactly what. I think it's time we had a family talk, said Mrs. Margaret. All of us, including Lily. They gathered in the garden where Lily was playing with her toys while the adults sat around her. Lily, sweetie, Grandma needs to talk to you about something important, began Mrs. Margaret. Is it about taking me to live far away? Asked the girl, stopping her play. Yes, it is. Grandma was thinking of taking you to see other places, other people. But I don't want to see other places, interrupted Lily. I want to stay here with Daddy and Mommy Emily. What if Grandma came to live nearby too, so she could play with you whenever you wanted? Lily looked at her with interest. You would live here in New York City? I could, yes, if you'd have me around. Ryan looked at his mother-in-law in surprise. Mom, are you serious? I am, Ryan. I realized I was trying to repeat the same mistakes I made with Samantha. And I can't lose Lily the same way I lost my daughter. Grandma, can you come play with me every day? Asked Lily excitedly. Yes, I can, sweetie, if Daddy and Mommy Emily allow it. Lily looked at Ryan and Emily as if seeking approval. What do you think? Ryan looked at Emily, who nodded with a smile. I think it would be wonderful to have Grandma nearby, he said. Lily ran to hug Mrs. Margaret, who was moved by her granddaughter's spontaneous affection. Now we're an even bigger family, said the happy girl. But while everyone celebrated, Emily felt a growing anguish in her chest. The custody issue seemed resolved, which meant her part in the agreement was fulfilled. In a few days, her presence there would no longer be necessary. As if Ryan had read her thoughts, he approached her. Emily, we need to talk about what happens now. I know, she said quietly, so as not to draw Lily's attention. Our agreement was for 8 days. 4 have already passed. What if I said I don't want it to be just an agreement anymore? Before she could answer, Lily ran up to them. Mommy, now that Grandma's going to be close, can we have a party? What kind of party, Princess? A family party, to celebrate that no one is leaving. Lily's innocent words struck Emily like a dagger. How to explain to a 3-year-old that some people have to leave, even when we don't want them to? Let's see what we can arrange, she said, avoiding making promises she might not be able to keep. That night, while Lily slept, Emily, Ryan and Mrs. Margaret gathered in the living room to discuss the next steps. Emily, I want you to know I'm grateful for everything you've done for our family, began Mrs. Margaret. Lily has never been as happy as she has been these past few days. Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. Taking care of Lily has been a gift for me too. For that very reason, I'd like to make a proposal. Emily looked at her curiously. What kind of proposal? I'd like you to continue being part of Lily's life, not as a temporary arrangement, but as someone important in our family. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ryan interjected. Say you'll stay with us. Emily looked at them both, feeling her heart race. Is this what you really want? Or are you feeling obligated because of Lily? Emily, said Mrs. Margaret sincerely, in 3 days you managed to do what I couldn't in 70 years. Unite a family. Lily loves you. Ryan loves you. And I've learned to respect and admire you. Ryan loves you. Emily looked at him, seeking confirmation. Yes, I do, he said without hesitation. It wasn't what was planned, but it happened. And now I can't imagine our life without you. Emily felt her eyes well up. But our story started with a lie. How can we build something real on a false foundation? Every story has a beginning, said Mrs. Margaret. What matters isn't how it started, but how it continues and how it ends. And if things don't work out, what if our feelings change? What if they do work out, countered Ryan. What if our feelings only grow stronger? Emily looked at them both, seeing hope and sincerity in their eyes. I need to think. This is too important a decision to make on impulse. Of course, said Ryan. We still have 4 days until our original agreement ends. Use that time to decide what you really want. But regardless of your decision about Ryan, added Mrs. Margaret, I'd like you to consider maintaining some kind of connection with Lily. She really needs you. That night, Emily stayed up late thinking about everything that had happened over the past few days. Her life had been completely turned upside down, and she needed to decide whether she was willing to embrace this change or return to her comfort zone. On the morning of the 5th day, Lily woke up with one fixed idea. She wanted to visit the bakery where Emily worked. Mommy, you promised you'd take me to see where you make bread, she reminded her during breakfast. That's true, I did promise. How about we go this morning? Can I come too? Asked Ryan. And me, added Mrs. Margaret. I'd like to see the place where you two met. So the whole family headed to St. Joseph's Bakery, in the heart of Greenwich Village. Lily was radiant, holding firmly onto Emily's hand as she observed everything with curiosity. Look at all the bread, she exclaimed upon seeing the display case full of fresh products. Mrs. Carman, who was at the counter, was moved to see Emily arrive with company. So this is the famous Lily, she said, bending down to the girl's level. Your mommy talks about you a lot. And are you Mrs. Carman, who makes the most delicious cream puffs in New York City? Yes, I am, dear. Would you like to try one? While Lily savoured a fresh cream puff, Mrs. Carman chatted with Ryan and Mrs. Margaret. Emily is a very special employee, she said. I've never seen anyone make bread with so much care. People come here not just for the quality, but for the warmth she offers. Can I see the place where Mommy works? Asked Lily. Emily took her behind the counter, showing her the oven, the dough being prepared, the organized ingredients. Is this where you make the little breads you give me every morning? The girl asked, amazed. Yes, it is, Princess. Can I learn how to make it too? Of course you can. Emily Parker took some sweet bread dough and taught Lily how to shape small rolls. The girl concentrated intensely, with her tongue sticking out the side of her mouth, trying to imitate Emily's movements. Ryan Thompson and Mrs. Margaret watched the scene with emotion. The natural bond between Emily and Lily was evident, how the girl completely trusted the young woman and how Emily showed endless patience. Daddy, look! I made a roll just like Mommy's, Lily shouted proudly. It's beautiful, Princess, said Ryan, approaching. Can I try it? Only after it bakes, Lily explained seriously. Mommy said raw dough is bad for your tummy. Mrs. Carman laughed at the girl's seriousness. This girl is going to be quite a baker. I'm going to work with Mommy when I grow up, Lily announced. We'll make bread together every day. The child's words deeply touched Emily, who wondered if she would have the courage to disappoint that innocent expectation. While they waited for Lily's rolls to bake, Mrs. Margaret struck up a conversation with Mrs. Carman. Do you know Emily well? Yes, I do. She's worked here for 3 years. She's a woman of character, hard-working, dedicated, never caused a day of trouble. And about her personal life? Mrs. Carman hesitated, realizing she was being evaluated. Emily is a private person, but I can say she has a huge heart. I've seen her help customers who were going through hard times, bring food to homeless people, take care of abandoned animals. Has she ever mentioned having children? No, she never talked about that, but she always showed special affection for the children who came here with their parents. Mrs. Margaret nodded, absorbing the information. When the rolls were ready, Lily insisted that everyone try her culinary creation. Even a bit crooked and uneven, they were delicious. "These are the best rolls I've ever had in my life," Ryan said dramatically, making his daughter laugh. "Really, Daddy? Really, Princess?" On the way home, Lily fell asleep in the car, tired from the adventure. Ryan drove in silence, watching in the rearview mirror as she slept peacefully in Emily's lap. "Thank you for giving her this moment," he said softly. "It was special for me too," Emily replied, "seeing Lily in that environment, getting to know an important part of my life." "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever imagined what our life together would be like? For real, I mean. Not as a temporary arrangement, but as a real family." Emily looked out the window before answering. "I do imagine, and it scares me how much that idea makes me happy." "Why does it scare you?" "Because happiness can be taken from us at any moment, and when you get used to it, the loss hurts much more." Ryan understood that there was something deeper behind Emily's fears, some previous loss that made her afraid to fully surrender to new happiness. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not yet. Maybe one day when I know if I'm staying or not." Arriving home, Ryan took Lily to her room while Emily helped Mrs. Margaret with some groceries. "Emily, can I say something?" the older woman said. "Of course, Mrs. Margaret. I saw how you look at Lily and Ryan, and I saw how they look at you. That's real love. That's exactly what scares me." "Why?" Emily took a deep breath, deciding to open up a bit. "Because I've loved a child intensely before, and I lost him." Mrs. Margaret stopped putting away the groceries and looked at her with full attention. "Do you want to talk about it?" 5 years ago, I took care of my nephew, Michael, my cousin's son. She had drug problems, and the boy stayed with me for almost 2 years. I loved him as if he were my own son." "What happened?" "One day she showed up, had recovered, was doing well, and took Michael away. It was her right, of course. But for me it was as if my world had ended." Mrs. Margaret felt her heart tighten as she understood Emily's fear. "And you're afraid the same thing might happen with Lily?" "I'm afraid of giving myself completely, and then having to face another loss. I don't know if my heart could take it. Emily, I can guarantee you one thing. No one will take you away from Lily if you decide to stay. Ryan isn't your cousin, and this situation is completely different. But what if our feelings change? What if Ryan discovers he doesn't truly love me? What if I can't be the mother Lily needs? What if everything works out?" countered Mrs. Margaret, echoing Ryan's words. "What if you become a happy and fulfilled family? I don't know if I have the courage to bet on that possibility. You know what? When Samantha told me she was going to marry Ryan, I said exactly the same things. What if he doesn't take good care of you? What if it doesn't work out? What if you regret it?" And what did she say? She said, "Mum, the fear of it not working out can't stop us from trying to be happy." And she was right. The years she lived with Ryan were the happiest of her life. Emily fell silent, absorbing the wisdom of those words. "Emily, you can choose to live in fear of what might go wrong, or you can choose to bet on what might go right. The decision is yours. And if I choose to bet, will you support me, even with all the problems and uncertainties?" "Yes, we will. Ryan loves you, Lily adores you, and I've learned to see you as the daughter I never had. You're already part of this family, regardless of official roles." That night, Lily had another nightmare and woke up crying. This time, however, it wasn't about being taken away, but about Emily leaving. "Mommy, I dreamed that you had gone away forever," she whimpered, clinging to Emily's pajamas. "It was just a dream, sweetheart. Mommy is here. Do you promise you won't leave?" Emily hesitated. She didn't want to lie to the child, but she also didn't want to leave her more distressed. I promise that, whatever happens, I will always love you, and I will always be part of your life. Even if you go live far away. Even if I go live far away. But who said I'm going to live far away? No one. But sometimes adults leave without warning. Lily's observation showed how much she had already matured emotionally due to the losses she had faced. Lily, do you want Mommy to stay here living with you? I want that more than anything in the world. Then I'll think very carefully about what's best for all of us, okay? Okay. But think soon, because taking too long isn't good. Emily smiled at the childish impatience, but she knew Lily was right. Prolonging the uncertainty wasn't fair to anyone. On the 6th day, Emily woke up early and found Ryan already in the kitchen making coffee. "Good morning," she said. "You woke up early today." "I couldn't sleep well," he confessed. "I keep thinking about what's going to happen 2 days from now. Ryan, I need to ask you some direct questions, and I want honest answers. You can ask whatever you want. If I decide to stay, what would our situation be? Would we be a real couple or just partners in raising Lily?" Ryan stopped stirring the coffee and looked at her. "We would be whatever you wanted us to be. If you just wanted to be Lily's maternal figure, I would respect that. If you wanted to be my companion and form a complete family, it would be the fulfillment of my dreams. And if after a while we realize we're not compatible as a couple, then we would find a way to continue being a family for Lily, even if in a different way. The important thing is that you would be in our lives. Would you be jealous if I continued working at the bakery? On the contrary, I would admire your independence and dedication even more. And if I wanted to have more children in the future," Ryan smiled, "Lily would love to have little siblings, and I would love to see you pregnant with our children." Ryan's answers were exactly what Emily wanted to hear, but there was still one last fear to face. "Ryan, I need to tell you about Michael." "Michael?" Emily then told the whole story of the nephew she had raised for 2 years and then lost. Ryan listened in silence, finally understanding the origin of her fears. "I understand why you're scared," he said when she finished. "But our situation is completely different. You're not temporarily taking care of Lily due to adverse circumstances. You're being invited to be a permanent part of our family. But what if you change your mind?" "Emily, look into my eyes," he asked, holding her face in his hands. "I love you. I love how you care for Lily. I love how you brought lightness to our home. I love your dedication, your sincerity, your strength. I won't change my mind." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've experienced true love before, with Samantha. I know how to recognize when it's real, and what I feel for you is real, even though it's different from what I felt for her." "Different how?" "With Samantha, it was overwhelming passion, that young and intense love. With you, it's something more mature, more solid. It's a love that grew naturally, based on admiration, affection, and compatibility." Ryan's words touched Emily deeply, who felt her fears slowly dissolving. "And Lily? Do you think she would understand that our relationship is becoming real?" "I think Lily already understands that better than we do. Children sense when love is real." At that moment, Lily appeared in the kitchen with messy hair and her teddy bear under her arm. "Good morning, family," she said cheerfully. "Good morning, Princess," Ryan and Emily replied together. "Can I have breakfast with you?" "Of course you can," said Emily, picking her up. "Mommy, were you crying?" asked Lily, noticing Emily's teary eyes. "Sometimes we cry from happiness, sweetheart." "Why are you happy?" Emily looked at Ryan, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm happy because I discovered I have a very special family." "I'm happy too," said Lily. "I'm going to tell Grandma that Mommy is happy." And she ran off toward Mrs. Margaret's room, leaving Ryan and Emily alone again. "I think she approved of our conversation," said Ryan, smiling. "I think so," agreed Emily. "Ryan?" "Yes?" "I want to bet that it's going to work out." "Are you sure?" "I am. I can't let the fear of what might go wrong stop me from trying to be happy." Ryan kissed her gently, sealing a decision that would change all their lives. "Welcome to the family, Emily Parker." "Thank you for accepting me, Ryan Thompson." When Mrs. Margaret came down for breakfast, accompanied by Lily, who had excitedly told her about Mommy's happiness, She found Ryan and Emily holding hands, with radiant smiles on their faces. "Can I assume you've reached a decision?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Can I assume a certain granddaughter of ours spread the news?" Ryan retorted. "Lily said that Mommy was crying from happiness and that she discovered she has a special family," explained Mrs. Margaret. "I deduced the rest." "Then you deduced correctly," said Emily. "I decided to stay. For real this time." Lily clapped her hands excitedly. "Does that mean we don't have to pretend we're a family anymore? Now we're a real family." The adults looked at each other, surprised by the girl's perception. "Lily, did you know we were pretending?" asked Ryan. "I knew you were nervous about something, but I also knew you really liked each other. Kids sense these things." "And now how do you feel?" asked Emily. "Now I feel safer. Because when we pretend, we can stop pretending, but when it's real, it's forever." Lily's childhood wisdom moved everyone present. It was as if she instinctively understood that the authenticity of feelings was more important than any performance. "So now, we're a real family," confirmed Mrs. Margaret, "and I couldn't be happier." "Grandma, can we have that party I asked for now?" "Of course we can, sweetie. How about we organize a welcome party for Mommy, Emily?" The last 2 days of the original deadline were the happiest that House had seen in a long time. Lily was radiant. Ryan was lighter and more confident. Mrs. Margaret discovered the joy of being a present grandmother, and Emily finally allowed herself to dream of a stable future, full of love. On the 8th day, when theoretically the agreement should have ended, no one remembered deadlines or contracts anymore. They simply were a family. 3 months later, Ryan and Emily got married in a simple ceremony in the house's garden, with Lily as the flower girl and Mrs. Margaret as the proudest matron of honor in the world. Mrs. Carman closed the bakery for the morning to be present, and Florence cried with emotion seeing the family reunited. During the ceremony, Lily insisted on giving a speech. "I want to say that now I have 2 mommies who love me very much. Mommy Samantha, who watches over me from heaven, and Mommy Emily, who takes care of me here on earth. And I have the best daddy in the world and the best grandma in the world. We're the happiest family ever." There weren't any dry eyes in the audience. 1 year later, when Lily turned 4, Emily discovered she was pregnant. The girl was thrilled with the news that she would be a big sister. "I'm going to teach the baby everything I know," she promised. "I'll show them where Mommy's kitchen is, I'll teach them how to make little breads, I'll tell stories. And you'll also teach them to love the family very much," added Mrs. Margaret, who had moved into a house in the same gated community and had become the most present and caring grandmother a child could have. Throughout all this time, Dr. Richard was never called upon again for custody matters. The family had found its natural balance, based on love, respect, and communication. Emily continued working at the bakery for another year, until she decided to open her own pastry shop, specializing in children's treats. Lily helped her every day after school, proud to be her mother's partner. Ryan expanded his construction company, focusing on housing projects for low-income families. He said that Emily had taught him that true success wasn't just about making money, but using money to do good. Mrs. Margaret became a volunteer at a local orphanage, applying all her experience and resources to help other children who needed families. She said that Lily had taught her that loving wasn't about controlling, but about supporting and being present. And Lily grew up secure in the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally by her entire family, developing a confident and caring personality that charmed everyone who met her. One evening, 5 years after the day Ryan had desperately entered the bakery, Emily found Lily in the garden looking at the stars. "What are you doing out there, Princess?" "I'm talking to Mommy Samantha," replied the girl, now 8 years old and much more articulate. "And what are you talking about?" "I'm telling her how happy we are, how well you take care of Daddy and me, how Grandma became our best friend, how funny my little brother is." Emily sat down next to Lily, also looking at the stars. "And what do you think she's saying back?" "I think she's saying she's proud of our family, and that she made the right choice when she chose you to be my second mommy." "Lily, do you really believe your first mommy chose me?" "Of course I believe that. Mom knows these things. She knew you would take good care of us when we needed it." Emily hugged Lily, feeling a deep peace in her heart. All the fears, all the uncertainties, all the pains of the past had turned into gratitude for having had the courage to bet on love. "Mummy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Are you really happy?" "No pretending, no lying, truly happy." Emily looked at the house where Ryan was putting little Gabriel to sleep, where Mrs. Margaret was tidying up the toys in the living room, where Florence was preparing Lily's nighttime milk. "I'm truly happy, Princess. Happier than I ever imagined possible." So everything worked out, right? Everything worked out, because sometimes life puts us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't understand how or why. And sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into, added Lily, with the wisdom that only loved children possess. That's right, my love. Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. End of story. And so ends our story of love, overcoming, and family. Now tell us, what did you think of this emotional journey? Did Emily make the right decision by betting on love? Leave your opinion in the comments. We really want to know how you felt following this family. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.